o'clock. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first live in-person Poetry Jam Cabaret here at the Belmar Public Library. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're all here. We have several poets tonight. Beyond myself, we have Art Veilleux. Okay. We have Rosemarie Korbelak, and we have Sharon Russell-Fowler sharing some poems with us tonight. So, why don't we get started? Sharon, you asked to go first, so why don't you say you get us started and get the ball rolling with us?
Okay.
Come on.
All right, Sharon.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Glad you could join us this evening. Tonight I'm going to be reading some from Lions of the Sky, Haiku for All Seasons. I've read some previous examples from here, but I'm going to be reading some of the summer ones this time. So here comes a few. Okay, summer. My fluffy seeds drift, tiny puffs lift in the breeze, and land, who knows where? A really nice example of those wonderful dandelions. I've heard a lot of people make dandelion wine. About that, but I've heard about
Drift in the air.
Yes. Wicked wine with wings, that's me, buzzing in your ear. Closer, closer, ouch!
No.
I'm towers and moat, molded with hands, cups, buckets, mighty, till high tide. And we know what happens then. They disappear. That's the picture on this side. I love summer fields, left field, right field, center field. I fly to them all. So what do you think I'm describing?
A ball.
Exactly, a ball specifically in a ball game. Fire in our bellies, we flicker, flash in twilight, rich meadows of stars. What do you think I'm describing there?
Firefly.
What was that?
Firefly.
Yes, fireflies,
Firefly.
my sister's all-time favorite. She says that there are none in California, so she's glad that she's visiting now in New Jersey because she loves fireflies.
This is the time of year for fireflies.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
And the last one for summer. You gasp as I roar, my mane exploding, sizzling, lion of the sky. Exploding.
Fireworks.
Fireworks, exactly.
Hey!
Last one for summer. And I thought to kind of, I love limericks, I've mentioned it in several of the videos. I pulled a couple of Ogden Nash's favorite ones. And,
Ogden Nash, there we go.
I had to get a couple in. So the first one is very, very short. It's only 2 lines, which is very unusual, because usually there are 4 or 5 lines. First one is called The Cow. The cow is of the bovine ilk. One end is moo, the other milk. He said humor in his, that's why I like it so much. And here's another one. I thought this was hysterical, but I hope you do as well. Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. This one's called The Duck. The duck. Behold the duck. It does not cluck. A cluck it lacks. It quacks. It is specifically fond of a puddle or pond. When it dines or sups, it bottoms up. And for any of you that have watched the ducks in our local tributaries, you've seen them when they go to eat, their bottoms are up. This one's called The Pig, and it's not in reference to a person. The pig, if I am not mistaken, supplies us sausage, ham, and bacon. Let others say his heart is big, I call it stupid of the pig. His heart is big. And I know. He always had a little pun there, which I really loved about it. And here's my favorite. The last one is called A Word to Husbands. To keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it, whether you're right shut up. And I'll make sure my husband gets a copy of that.
Yeah. Look out, man.
So yeah, so keep in mind, I mean, some poems, we've been doing all different types of poems over the last few Zoom meetings and in person, and poems are just so much fun. Whether they be limericks, whether they be haikus, whether they be the long historical ones, or the very short two-line ones that I was reading this evening. But hopefully you'll continue to read more poetry, and remember we have lots of ideas to still share with you, so come back and visit some more. We're in person.
Hey.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. These are great poems.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, who's next? Who wants to go next? Me? All right, I'll do one of mine, and then maybe we'll roll. You'll go, and then you go, and then I'll come back with my second one.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to do my first one here. Is a great poem by Rudyard Kipling. Now I did Gunga Din by him last time, which is great, and we all know he's a great English short story writer, poet, and novelist. And remembered for his tales and poems of British soldiers in India and his tales for children. So he has this one over here. It's called If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give away to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to, broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, will be a man, my son.
Great poem.
This is a great poem of self-control, learning how to master your destiny and controlling yourself, and how far it can take you. So that was great. Thank you so much. Bro, why don't you come on up? Share one with us.
So a week or two ago, I was driving either to or from the library, and this first line of this poem popped into my head. I have no idea, other than it was a memory for me of having to memorize this the 4th grade. And when I was just saying it to myself as I was driving, I was saying it with that tone, with that emotion, and it was one of the nuns who taught us. She was not only teaching us how to memorize, she was also teaching us how to get up in front of someone, connect with them, really emote. And so that this is how I memorized this poem, and I cannot recite it without
Feeling all that.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is Blacksmith by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles of his brawny arms are as strong as iron bands. His hair is crisp and black and long. His face is like the tan. His brow is wet with honest sweat. He earns whate'er he can, and looks the whole world in the face, for he owes not any man. Week in, week out, from morn till night, you can hear the bellows blow. You can hear him swing his mighty sledge with measure, beat and slow, like a sexton ringing the village bell when the evening sun is low. And children coming home from school look in the open door. They love to see the flaming forge and hear the bellows roar, and catch the flaming sparks that fly like chaff from the threshing floor. He goes on Sunday to the church and sits among his boys. He hears the parson pray and preach. He hears his daughter's voice singing in the choir, and it makes his heart rejoice. It sounds to him like his mother's voice, singing in paradise. He needs must think of her once more, how in the grave she lies, and with his hard, rough hands he wipes a tear out of his eyes. Toiling, rejoicing, sorrowing, onward in life he goes. Each morning sees some task begin, each evening sees it close. Something attempted, something done, he has earned his night's repose. Thanks, thanks to thee, my worthy friend, for the lesson thou hast taught. Thus at the flaming forge of life, our fortunes must be wrought. Thus on its sounding anvil shaped, each burning deed and thought.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Wonderful. Good job, guys. You guys know everyone for calling. You did great reading. Great.
Art, you're up.
Okay.
And you know, from those, I remember back in the day when I would read a lot of poetry in the elementary school, and there were words that I was unfamiliar with. I would immediately go to the dictionary and say, "What does wrought mean?" You know, because I wanted to, and chaff it, and like that's how my vocabulary expanded,
Sure,
because I
sure.
was forced to understand them better by looking and finding out their meanings.
Okay. All right. Well, I had a very good poetry experience this weekend. I was away to the Peach Music Festival in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And when I'm at a music festival, I take time to bring a poetry book and read poems to the people around me, and read poems to people I meet. And after I had read some poetry to this one group, a day and a half later, I was walking through an area in the festival, and she came over to me and stopped me, and she said her and her friends spoke for 20 minutes about poetry after I left them, and that in itself was so important to me that it made the whole poetry thing worth it, just to know that stimulated and inspired some people to talk about poetry. So if there's anybody out there who loves to talk about poetry, come and join us, and we'll talk about poetry together. Now, the poem that I read them was a poem by Billy Collins, a living American poet who was the poet laureate for a time. And this is called The Great American Poem. If this were a novel, it would begin with a character, a man alone on a southbound train, or a young girl on a swing by a farmhouse. and as the pages turned, you would be told that it was morning or the dead of night. And I, the narrator, would describe for you the miscellaneous clouds over the farmhouse. And what the man was wearing on the train, right down to his red tartan scarf, and the hat he tossed onto the rack above his head, as well as the cows sliding past his window. Eventually, one can only read so fast, you would learn either that the train was bearing the man back to the place of his birth, or that he was headed into the vast unknown. And you might just tolerate all this as you waited patiently for shots to ring out in a ravine where the man was hiding, or for a tall, raven-haired woman to appear in a doorway. But this is a poem, not a novel. And the only characters here are you and I, alone in this imaginary room, which will disappear after a few more lines, leaving us no time to point guns at one another or toss our clothes into a roaring fireplace. I ask you, who needs the man on the train, and who cares what his black valise contains? We have something better than all this turbulence, lurching towards some ruinous conclusion. I mean the sound that we will hear as soon as I stop writing and put down this pen. I once heard someone compare it to the sound of crickets in a field of wheat, or more faintly, just the wind over the field, stirring things that we will never see. The end. You know, what I really love, and I think a lot of people pointed out to me, is the sudden cut he makes from the thoughts about, well, if this was a novel, here's how it would go, into, but this is a poem.
Yeah, I
And the poem is between you and I in some special way. So
it sounded as if the way the words were sounding, he was veering into prose, like as if it was a novel. And then he wakes himself up, says, oh, this is a poem, and then goes back automatically to like a poem.
nice.
Yeah.
Good observation.
Yeah.
I like that, totally. You know, if you don't mind, I'd like to read one more that kind of has something to do with what Sharon said. I also run into words that I don't know, and I have to look them up. Sometimes it could get burdensome, I have to admit, and I find myself deconstructing poems with lines that point out over here and there, saying what this word means and what the reference for that is.
Mm-hmm.
But the next poem, also by Billy Collins, is called Aubade, and that's a word A-U-B-A-D-E, Aubade, and it means a song or a poem of the morning. So this is Billy Collins' poem, Aubade. If I lived across the street from myself, and I was sitting in the dark on the edge of the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, I might be wondering what the light was doing on in my study at this hour. Yet here I am at my desk, in the study, wondering the very same thing. I know I did not have to rise so early, to cut open with a penknife the bundles of papers at the newsstand, as the man across the street might be thinking. Clearly I am not a farmer or a milkman, and I am not the man across the street who sits in the dark because sleep is his mother and he is one of her many orphans. Maybe I am awake just to listen to the faint, high-pitched ringing of the tungsten in the single light bulb, which sounds like the rustling of trees. Or it is my job simply to sit as still as a glass of water on the night table, or the man, of the man across the street, as still as the photograph of my wife in a frame. But there is the first bird to deliver his call, and there is the reason that I am up, to catch the three-note song of that bird, and now to wait with him for some reply. Billy Collins, everybody. Tommy.
I guess I'm up for my second one. Okay. All right. So the second poem has a kind of tie into the first one. It is "How Did You Die" by Edmund Vance Cooke. Now, Edmund Vance Cooke was born in June 5th in 1866 in Ontario, Canada. And his first job after leaving school was in a sewing machine factory. And in 1893, he left that job to earn a living as a poet, writer, and public speaker. And he published his first book of poems, A Patch of Pansies, in 1894, and went on to publish a further 15 books of poetry and several books for children. And he became a broadcaster on station WWJ in Detroit, broadcasting his poems live to thousands of listeners. And he passed away in Cleveland on December 18, 1932. So, "How Did You Die" by Edmund Vance Cooke. Did you tackle that trouble that came your way with a resolute heart and cheerful? Or hide your face from the light of day with a craven soul and fearful? Oh, what trouble's a ton, or what trouble's an ounce, or a trouble is what you make it. And it isn't the fact that you're hurt that counts, but only how did you take it. You are beaten to earth? Well, what's that? Come up with a smiling face. It's nothing against you to fall down flat, but to lie there, that's disgrace. The harder you're thrown, why the higher you bounce. Be proud of your blackened eye. It isn't the fact that you're licked that counts. It's how did you fight and why. And though you'd be done to the death, what then? If you battled the best you could, if you played your part in the world of men, why? The critic will call it good. Death comes with a crawl or comes with a pounce. And whether he's slow or spry, it isn't the fact that you're dead that counts, but only how did you die.
Good lesson in that poem.
Very much. Always makes you think of the higher.
You definitely see the connection between that and death.
Yeah, it is.
And also, how did you live?
Yes.
So,
How did you live? How did you die? And if ever there was a lesson for people to follow, to always find the better path, right? So, to follow duty. You know, duty's been another theme of some of our poems in the past. So, and always, you know, did you do your duty is a similar question to what these are. So, this was a great poem. So, all right. So that's the two that I have right now. Unfortunately, VJ couldn't send me any poems for today, so he'll be hopefully joining us next time. Does anybody else have a poem? I know Art, you had a poem you wanted to read.
I've got a couple more poems.
Sure. All right, bring them on.
All right.
All right.
Thanks. Okay, Sharon, great to have you here.
yes,
Thank you for coming,
Sharon.
Sharon.
absolutely. Thank
Bring
you.
your friends.
Yes, I will. I will.
I bring all mine. All right. So the triptych of Billy Collins will complete with no things, and I'm going to put my reading glasses on just so that I can be sure to get this here. So I think this and the other two poems have something to say about poetry itself. So let me read this and then we'll see if we can, if that becomes obvious. No Things by Billy Collins. This love of pretty things, part natural from the slow eye of childhood, part literary affectation, this attention to the morning flower, and later in the day to the fly strolling around the rim of a wine glass. Are we just avoiding the one true destiny when we do that? Averting our eyes from Philip Larkin, who waits for us in his undertaker's coat. The leafless branches against the sky will not save anyone from the infinity of death, nor will the sugar bowl or the sugar spoon on the table. So why bother with the checkerboard lighthouse? Why waste time on the sparrow or the wildflower along the roadside, when we should be all alone in our rooms, throwing ourselves against the wall of life and the opposite wall of death, the door locked behind us as we hurl ourselves at the question of meaning and the enigma of our origins? What good is the firefly, the droplet running along the green leaf, or even the bar of soap spinning around the bathtub, when ultimately we are meant to be banging away on the mystery as hard as we can, to hell with the neighbors, banging away on nothingness itself, some with their foreheads, others with the maul of sense, the raised jawbone of poetry.
Good, nice.
So, give everyone a moment to think about that. You know, the literary style of Billy Collins is one that gives a lot of simple language but complex thoughts. And I think you can see it in a poem like this, where he talks about the person who's sensitive to the small, beautiful things in life, like the morning flower or the leafless branches against the sky, as opposed to those deep philosophical questions that everyone struggles with as they think about their own lives and their own mortality. And then suggests at the very end that the way to go forward and understand that is by using poetry, because of the things that poetry can bring to our thought and understanding. So I just thought that was an especially interesting point of view that he's showing me.
Well, it just illustrates how I think how poetry, good poetry especially, can really help break down and simplify the more complicated questions in life.
Yes.
And makes it more easily to contemplate and maybe understand some of the bigger themes. And that's why poetry is so important, because we face so many questions in life these days, and sometimes poetry is what can help settle the mind on a path of solution. So,
Yeah,
which is great.
Absolutely right.
What I liked about it was the words the words he used made me picture it exactly. And like the droplet on a leaf. And it's like if you're zooming in with the,
focus.
Zoom camera,
yes,
right? Yeah.
And you see that one droplet, and it really pictured the what was another one? I liked the leafless branches as well, because that was a very vivid picture for me too. But there were several that when I'm listening to the words and I'm picturing it, and it's just, and then yet some of the more, I don't want to call them negative thoughts, but I'm thinking about banging, locked in a locked room, banging myself against the wall of death and the wall of life, and it was
Sounds like it's quite a struggle, right?
yes.
Painful, maybe.
Yes.
Totally. So the last poem I have to read is by a poet from Asbury Park. I only picked up this book yesterday at the PBX bookstore here in town, and they have copies of it for anybody who would be interested. The name of the book is The Repeater, a collection of broken records, and it's by a poet who goes by just the initials AK. So I don't know much about this poet. I only got the book yesterday, but it's available here in the library. It should have been stacked today. So anybody
It's now in
interested
stacks, yeah.
in reading her work, you can come in the library and take it out. And I'm going to read the first poem from her collection. This poem is called The Smell of Rain on Dusk. Growing up in a place that doesn't exist does strange things to a body. Certain corners of New Jersey are a sprawling web of cornfields turned subdivisions with the fabled eccentric artery of Route 9 cutting through it, a conveyor belt that took our daddies to the city before the sun came up and brought them home long after our bedtimes ticked by. Our tired eyes lit out across well-manicured lawns, waiting for equally tired headlights to swing the corner into the drive. My birth certificate boasts the seal of New York, but it was the soft whir of crickets praying to their secret gods that lulled me to sleep in the summers. It was never the echo of cars and people in their endless motion, hustling like the insects in the soft grass, oblivious in their valleys and canyons, both moving in the ancient patterns shaped by geography and instinct. We hunted the empty places for fireflies and swam in our own blue pools. The neighbors would come, and the men would drink beer together and laugh at themselves. The women sipped wine or iced tea while we ran amok, our souls gone leather from a barefoot month, gulping mouthfuls from the garden hose, and sometimes turning our faces to fountains, aiming at each other with the messy buckshot accuracy of children. We were gluttons for the summer, and we drank in the deep, humid days with the same greedy abandon that our parents swallowed their long summer cocktails and canned domestics. We picked our mosquito bites and our noses, and the earth spun hard enough on its external axis to make the sky fiery through the leaves. When the ultramarine of the open ocean loomed above us as we careened our necks and bodies, we would go indoors and wash the deep like Roman soldiers returning from a long campaign. Our skin returned to us as gray water circled the drains. Our pictures were snapped with disposable birthday cameras, and we lost our teeth in candy hoarded from brightly painted cellophane goodie bags, lovingly wrapped by the mother of this friend or that. Our lives were plastic in primary colors and cotton blends in splashes of neon. Neighborhood dogs herded us, and we loved them like we were told God loved all, equally and without judgment. Even when they covered us in mud and fur and spit in their excitement, in their eagerness to prove that the world would go on forever and that we were perfect for always to them. The construct of our daily motion was a constant shift from vehicle to building, to soccer field, to underwear, to uniform, to bathing suit, to pajamas, a frenzy of hands and hair ties, a cacophony of beat-up sneakers running from one end of the polished hardwood floor in the state-funded gym to the other. Pearls of laughter. Someone told a dirty joke or whispered a word that only the adult world was privy to. The raised eyebrows of the code breaker as they waited for the reaction of the crowd. A discovery, secret. Hands hiding smiles that eyes gave away. Shrieks of agony, tears, the sudden stillness of children absorbing their own mortality. A plaster cast covered with hearts and names, standing guard, letters sprawled upon bright Sharpie markers, our graffiti, a weaving sacred testament. But none of it existed.
That is such a great description of growing up in New Jersey.
Hell yeah.
I could
Come
picture
here and help us.
so many nights as a kid.
Yep.
I had a backyard. I grew up in a house and we had a 100 by 100 foot backyard.
Wow.
And chasing the fireflies, catching frogs, running up and down the streets with all the kids and the dogs running around.
Yep.
Everything that poem said is so true. What a vivid poem.
Definitely, that's the best word to describe it. Vivid.
Oh my
I
God.
wanted to know how she knew how I grew up.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
How did she know how I grew up?
Did you have a camera watching us?
know.
You know, oh my God, like a Truman Show. Like watching us go. What? Very nice
I
done.
love that conveyor belt, bringing
Yes.
our fathers to everyone's
Route 9.
Wow, Route 9.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. You know.
And the blue pools, and it was true. Even like from waking up in the morning and wearing your clothes for school and coming home and changing in your swimsuit and then your pajamas, and each day. It was like a revolving door. Same thing. You live for the day.
Mhm.
When you finally had to sack out at night, you wake up, okay, what are we doing now?
Yeah.
Where are we going? Where are we riding our bikes?
And the line about bearing your soul's leather bike
Right.
from running around barefoot all day.
Yeah.
You know? And it's, again, it's so true. I remember doing that as a kid. That's what, today I can't walk around barefoot. I just can't stand it. But because of that, I remember what it was like running around barefoot and your feet would be like hard and like leather. So very well done. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
want to get my own copy of that.
Right? But with all the vividness of that, I'm left with a deep misunderstanding of something from the very first line and the last line, because the poem starts with the line, growing up in a place that doesn't exist
Right.
does strange things to the body. And then the very last line, after she describes our lives,
Yeah.
Right.
she says, but none of it existed. What does that say? Yeah. Where? I mean, if she knows it existed. She's
described it.
Yeah, she's
Routine.
described it like she lived it.
Or maybe she didn't live it. She saw someone else live it.
Possible.
And she was envious that person,
Yeah.
that this was a fantasy of hers.
And because her birth certificate says New York.
From New York. Yeah, there you go.
And now I want to know how old she is.
34.
34.
Wow.
So she's young.
I'll have to reach out to her. Maybe we can get her to come.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
really super
That
good.
would be great.
Yes.
Yes.
So I will do that.
So she has a nice collection of poems.
How many pages is the book?
Not many. They're not numbered.
Oh, they're not numbered.
It's a thin book.
It's a quick and easy.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I've read the second. I've read a few others today, but I wanted to share that first one because it struck me just so much like what our lives are like.
Yep.
And she put it down so well.
So that is pretty much the end of our poetry for tonight. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank you all for watching online and watching the video that we're going to be putting up. Our next poetry jam is in 2 weeks, which is going to be on Wednesday, July. Patty, what is it?
21st.
21st. 6 p.m. right here at the library. We'll have light refreshments here for everyone, and we're looking forward to people coming in and joining us to read poetry and share with them either your own poetry or contemporary or classic poetry. So with that, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for watching, and have a great night.
Woohoo!